What's up, Mech fans, and welcome back to the channel. So we've got another episode of Mobile Suit Gundam GQuuuuuX to talk about. This is episode number 10, titled Yomagn'tho Blockade, and today, as per usual, we're going to be doing a full spoiler review and breakdown of the episode. But before we dive into it, please do leave a like on this video and subscribe if you're a fan of mecha anime content and want to see plenty more videos like this in the future. Also, head on down to the comments section below if you've seen this episode, then let me know what you thought of it. And without further ado, let us dive into the recap of the episode. With the Yomagn'tho nearing completion, Zeon conducts final preparations for its opening. Challia confides in Amate on his disillusionment with Zeon's cause after the 1-year war and how Char's ambitions resonated with him, before gifting Amate a gun and telling her to follow her desires. Challia meets Gihren and his entourage, where she criticizes Giren's inaction following her assassination attempt. As they call Challia out on her cowardice, Gihren and his entourage are poisoned and killed by her. Challia takes control of the Yomagn'tho and attacks Giren's forces, with Xavier and Nyaan leading. Nyaan heads inside the Yomagn'tho's core on a special mission from Challia, during which she remembers her lecture on strength and survival and being gifted a gun. In the midst of the chaos, Shirazu escapes. Realizing that Challia made her move earlier than anticipated, Challia and Amate deploy to stop the Yomagn'tho. Nyaan controls the Rose of Sharon with the G-thread and aims the Yomagn'tho at the Zeon base of Abaoku, where it releases a massive zeknova that teleports the base and destroys it, killing its garrison before vanishing. Amate becomes furious at the Rose of Sharon's use for destruction and confronts the G-thread inside the core, demanding to know its pilot. Right, so that should give you guys an overview of this episode, and diving into it, this was, again, a crazy episode. We're finally kind of moving into the third act territory of where, things are kind of starting to wrap up in some ways. Not fully wrapping up just yet, but you can kind of feel like this is the final battle. The confrontation that we're going to have next episode between Amate and Nyaan is going to be that kind of final confrontation, if you will. And I'm sure there'll be stuff to follow afterwards in, of course, episode 12, and I'm sure there'll be kind of a bit of an epilogue final battle, if you will, where the two characters might end up teaming up with one another. Be very interesting to see what the direction they do go down. But in terms of this episode, this was a lot more action focused, especially in the back half, and you got a lot of crazy stuff going on here. And I want to start out by talking about Challia's backstory, which was my personal favorite part of this episode, because he's a character that's been extremely interesting throughout this series so far. And, they kind of took him from the original Gundam series where he shows up for literally one episode. And he's a character that even then, there's like references to things that he's done, and there's an intriguing character there. There's an intriguing history to the character. And now we're kind of really starting to explore that a little bit more in this series, particularly in this episode, where we do see that full backstory of him going to Jupiter and what happens there. And essentially, to kind of sum it up, he was left for dead. Like, he was on the verge of dying. Everyone around him was on the verge of dying as well, and then by some sort of miracle, I guess, probably some new type of magic kind of stuff, he did end up surviving. But he kind of talks about how in that moment, when he was so close to death and there's no expectations or thoughts or anything, was when he achieved true freedom. And I think the way they've characterized him throughout this series really kind of lends itself to the thematics of this series, particularly when it comes to what a lot of the characters are going through, because everyone kind of wants this sense of freedom, and that's what the Kira provides. We'll kind of move on to something else that really caught my eye in this episode, and that is the way that they kind of link different characters and the way that they all kind of mirror each other in many ways. Because we do get a scene where Nyaan is gifted a gun by Challia. We also get a scene where Amate is gifted a gun by Challia, and they're both given for two different reasons, which really nicely align with both characters. And I think the way that they've done the Challia-Amate relationship and Challia-Nyaan relationship is really, really fascinating, because you've got Challia, who kind of wants to achieve that sense of true freedom, and that's also what Amate wants. Maybe they want it in different ways, but ultimately their kind of goal and their purpose, what they're striving towards, is to gain that freedom. Challia is gifting Amate that gun to choose her own destiny, if you will. Like, she can take the gun, she can do whatever she wants with it. And ultimately, Challia is giving her that choice. He's giving her the tools to make that decision. When it comes to Challia, though, she is gifting Nyaan that gun for survival. She is, in many ways, a survivor herself of the Zabi family, kind of had to seek out that leadership position herself, and obviously, in this episode, take out Gihren. So Challia is all about survival, self-preservation, and that's kind of Nyaan's goal, where, ultimately, she tried to do the thing of looking out for other people in Amate and Shuji, but when push comes to shove, she's got to look out for her own survival. That is kind of the crux of her character, is in her character description, all this kind of stuff. So I really like how they've nicely done those two characters, Amate and Nyaan, kind of wanting like very different and opposite things, and then the kind of mentor characters that they have nicely kind of link up with them and have these same feelings and same desires. So I really like the kind of metaphorical stuff that they've done there. I think it's, you know, really like deeper level storytelling that maybe on the surface, like obviously it is kind of referential to one another and it is supposed to mirror two different things. But when you look deeper under the skin of this series and these characters, there's really interesting development and the way that they've characterized them, which a lot of people are overlooking because there's not like surface level development for a lot of these characters. It ultimately comes from deeper within these characters and deeper within the story. Speaking of Gihren, who I did mention, they wiped him out way too quickly, in my opinion. It's one of those cases where they kind of build a character up and then they're just gone straight away. Granted, there wasn't much that they could have really done with Gihren. Now, maybe they could have had a bit more conflict between him and challia, but ultimately it was going to lead to this thing of one of them is going to betray the other. And obviously, as we've primarily been following challia in terms of the Zabi family, it makes the most sense that Gihren would be wiped out in this moment. With that said, though, I would have liked to see a little bit more of him. We got one scene. Like, it would have been cool to see him, you know, kind of doing a speech to, you know, Zeon soldiers and that. I think seeing that side of Gihren, at least just for one scene, would have been something nice, because that is the more, like, traditional Gihren that we have come to know and I want to say love, but I don't think really anyone loves that character. But I guess I appreciate the way that they characterized him. And of course, like, the Sig Zeon speech is beyond iconic in terms of Gundam history, and it is said by him. So seeing something like that would have been nice to see in this episode, but even still, he was utilized in the story for the purpose that he was intended to serve, and they didn't keep him around any longer to do anything else. Like, I completely get why they wiped him out, but you kind of build up that character and build up like the ongoing like political conflict between challia and Gihren, then you just wipe him out, you know, 5 minutes, maybe not even 5 minutes after being on screen. It's, yeah, I would have liked to see a little bit more. Another character that we were teased with a couple of episodes ago and are now teased with again is Shirazu, who everyone knows is Char. And this episode pretty much confirms that it is Char because, of course, he manages to escape from being wiped out by the gihren. So it's obvious that that guy is Char. Like, some people are saying maybe it's not, but let's face it, you don't show a character like that and show these two seemingly very important scenes with him in, and he not be an important character who happens to look exactly like Char. So yeah, Shirazu is very obviously Char. In fact, the GQuuuuuuX account posted a teaser image for next episode which shows Char's uniform, like the shoulder and that. So obviously Char is returning, presumably next episode. They might even end off the episode with that, which I don't know why they'd spoil it on Twitter from the official account, but it is what it is, and that picture is out there. So I don't consider it to be too much of a spoiler because, like I said, the official account did post it. So Char's coming back. It was inevitable that he would at some point in the series because you don't kind of set a load of stuff up with him to never pay it off. That would make zero sense and would be terrible storytelling. Shout out to the action in this episode though, and especially shout out to the mobile suits that we get to see in this episode as well. We essentially get a big battle between Gyan's and Big Zam's, and that is something I never thought I would see. Like, first off, mass-produced Big Zam's, which is something that we never did see in the original series, and we also never saw mass-produced Gyan's. We also never saw Gyan's fighting in space. And that was just super cool. Like, it's, you know, almost like fan servicey type stuff that fits in with the storytelling, because we're seeing like classic Universal Century suits used in different circumstances and different capacities. So we're seeing like mass-produced Gyans, mass-produced Big Zams facing off against one another when they are, you know, both mobile suits of Zeon. And it was so cool. Like, seeing, you know, like 5 Gyans kind of ram into one Big Zam with the Lancer was awesome. Like, it was just really, really cool stuff, and they utilized the action really, really well in this episode. I kind of wish that we got even more of it, and I hope in next episode we do get even more of that Gyan versus Big Zam kind of action, because in my opinion, it was some of the coolest we've seen in the series so far. But of course, there is one massive talking point for this episode, and that is the Yomagn'tho being used and zeknova in Abaoka. I believe that's how you pronounce the name. This was an incredible sequence for many different reasons. The animation went incredibly hard. The use of colors and really vivid, bright colors that just popped on screen. That stuff was fantastic. It was also so like Evangelion coded with third impact type stuff with big like spinning thing going around, and like I said, a lot of color stuff and things coming through a portal type stuff. Like it's very much rebuild of Evangelion slash end of Evangelion, like weird trippy psychological kind of stuff, which was awesome. And I know that with the Yomagn'tho in particular, they are going for this kind of eldritch Lovecraftian type of horror feeling, which I think is perfectly represented, of course, in the name Yomagn'tho, which I believe does come from Lovecraft. And then, of course, like everything that's going on with, space station kind of coming through a portal thing and breaking up, and so much cool stuff going on. But not to mention the music in this particular scene was absolutely phenomenal, done by Yoshimasa Terui, who of course has done the score for the series so far, and the score for this Gundam series has been absolutely phenomenal. Zero complaints. Like it's got a unique feeling to it that feels not like Gundam, apart from obviously all the classic Universal Century stuff that they use in the 1 Year War section. But in terms of stuff we've got in the modern day stuff, it's got that sci-fi feeling, but also a bit of like a lo-fi type of feeling in ways as well. And also you can tell that this is from the same composer as Jujutsu Kaisen. The Yomagntho Zeknova score sounded very, very similar to the score that plays in the Sukuna versus Maharaga fight in Jujutsu Kaisen, which I believe was episode 17 of season 2. But that's not a bad thing, because it really fit the scene. They added the different elements to it where it did feel like that sci-fi Lovecraftian kind of horror, and I think they really captured that vibe nicely. Of course, then with the design of the Yomagn'tho as well, it does very much look like a big, like, tentacle Lovecraft monster kind of thing. Really cool stuff. I love the way that they've added a lot of visual inspiration and like outsourced inspiration as well from different things. Like I said, Lovecraftian horror definitely plays into a lot of this stuff, and I think it's just really cool. It's unique, it's different, adds a different angle to the Gundam franchise, and much like with the original Gundam series and many other Gundam series that we do have, it feels like something made by a creative or group of creatives that have like a vision and have something that they want to add, inspiration that they want to throw in there that's not just inspired by the Gundam that comes before. So overall, I thought this was another very exciting episode of GQuuuuuuX. But with that said, we've only got 2 episodes left, and it gets to a point when you're getting closer and closer to what will probably be the end of the series, and you realize there is so much still to do. And in those next 2 episodes, I am a little bit worried that we're going to rush through things, because it kind of feels like we have been over the past couple of episodes. I think they've done it, as effectively as they possibly could. But you can tell that if you gave this series another 12 episodes, you could have not stretched things out, but given things room to breathe, because the series moves incredibly fast-paced. It always has done. I think it's more evident than not when we get to this point, where we are moving essentially at the same pace that we have, but there's so much more in play. We've got Amate, we've got Nyaan, we've got their stories, we've got challia in play, we've got the general larger Zeon universe, and then there's elements like Earth, which has now been set up to be involved. Are we going to do anything more with Lala? What are we going to do with the Rose of Gihren? We've got Shah potentially coming back into the picture. How are we going to, effectively characterize Xavier a little bit more, or Comely, if they're even planning to do anything with her? And then Challia Bull, of course, you've got the stuff going on with him. And how are we going to kind of tie all this and wrap it all up nicely? And then there's the thing of Shuji, who seemingly is coming back next episode as well. So there's so much to wrap up in these next 2 episodes. And whilst I think that they can wrap up that central Amate and Nyaan conflict that's going on, there's still a lot that I'm not sure whether they can, because I don't know how the Shuji stuff is going to play out, because I have no idea what they're doing with that character. How does Shah play into all this? Are we going to explain what happened to Shah? Are we going to explain the Zeknova? Or is it just going to be kind of one of those things that exists without an explanation? I have no idea. I'm slightly worried, but at the same time, So far, I've loved this series. So I want to put my faith in the creatives that they are not rushing through this series, and there was a story to tell in 12 episodes where they could effectively tell the whole thing. And I hope it's not one of those cases of you're given 12 episodes, we want to do all this stuff, you don't get any more time than that, and then you have to rush through things. So I'm worried that it could go that direction, but at the same time, they could always do a sequel. There could be another 12 episodes that we don't even know about. But as it stands, we have like 2 episodes left. And in that 2 episodes, I'm slightly worried. But those are my thoughts on episode 10 of Mobile Suit Gundam GQuuuuuX, titled Yomagn'tho Blockade. Before I get out there, please do leave a like on this video and subscribe if you are a fan of mecha anime content and want to see plenty more videos like this in the future. Also, like I said earlier, head on down to the comments section below. Let me know your thoughts on this episode if you have seen it. I really hope you have, because we did just talk about a lot of spoilers. Are you excited for next episode to see the GQuuuuuX G-Thread duking it out in the Yomagn'tho? I know I'm excited, and I'm very interested to see what they're going to do with Shuji and Sha when they pop up. Thank you once again for tuning into Mecha Chat today. I'll see you guys next time.